What if the one thing you're doing to make someone love you more is actually the exact reason they keep pulling away? Stop. Because what I'm about to tell you is going to completely rewire how you think about avoidant people. And once you hear this, you cannot unhear it. Most people spend months, sometimes years, trying to figure out why the person they care about keeps running hot and cold. You text them and they respond hours later. Or you open up and they suddenly go quiet. You try to get closer and it feels like they just vanish into thin air. And the worst part, you start blaming yourself. You start thinking, maybe you're too much. Maybe you're too emotional. Maybe you love too hard. But here's the truth nobody is telling you. The problem is not how much you feel. The problem is the strategy you're unconsciously using. And today I'm going to give you the one habit that flips the entire dynamic on its head. The one habit that makes even the most emotionally distant person start thinking about you constantly. But before we get into it, I want you to drop one word in the comments right now. Just one word. Drop the word open in the comments. If you're ready to understand avoidance on a level that most people never reach, drop it right now. Because what's coming in the next few minutes is going to change how you see every relationship you've ever been in. Let's start from the very beginning. Because to understand the habit, you first have to understand the person. You have to get inside the mind of someone who pushes people away. Not because they want to be alone, not because they don't feel anything, but because feeling things deeply absolutely terrifies them. Avoidant people are not cold, or they are not robots, they are not broken. They are people who learn very early in life that depending on others is dangerous, that opening up leads to disappointment, that love comes with conditions, that getting too close means eventually getting hurt. So they built walls, strong walls, sophisticated walls, walls so thick that sometimes even they forget what's on the other side. Now, here's what most people do when they fall for an avoidant. They try to climb the wall. They knock on it. They bring flowers to it. They stand outside it shouting, "I'm safe, I promise." And what does the avoidant do? They build the wall higher because your effort, your pursuit, your visible need for them triggers their deepest fear. And that fear is this: if I let you in, I will lose myself. If I need you, I become vulnerable. And vulnerability is where I have always gotten hurt before. So every time you chase, they retreat. Every time you pull, they pull harder in the opposite direction. This is not cruelty. This is a survival mechanism so deeply wired into them that they probably don't even understand why they do it themselves. Now, I want you to really sit with that for a second. This is a person who is genuinely terrified of the thing they also genuinely want. That's not manipulation. That's one of the most painful internal contradictions a human being can live with. They want closeness. They fear closeness. They want love. They fear what love costs. And so they live in this constant push and pull, this constant internal war, never fully letting anyone in and never fully letting anyone go. And you've been caught in that war. You've been the one standing on the battlefield wondering what you did wrong, wondering why the closer you try to get, the further they drift, wondering if you will ever be enough. Here's where everything shifts. The one secret habit that makes avoidance obsess over you is not a trick. It is not a mind game. It is not about playing hard to get in the cheap, surface level way that every dating article tells you. It goes so much deeper than that. It is rooted in the actual psychology of how the avoidant brain works. And when you understand the psychology, you understand why this habit is the only thing that actually works. The habit is this: radical emotional self-sufficiency combined with genuine warmth. Let me say that again because it sounds simple, but it is anything but simple. Radical emotional self-sufficiency combined with genuine warmth. Not coldness, not withdrawal, not punishing them by disappearing, not pretending you don't care when you do. Genuine, alive, present warmth combined with a self-sufficiency so deep and so real that you are not waiting for them. You are not hovering. You are not adjusting your entire emotional state based on whether or not they texted you back. Now, let me break this down because those two things together create something in the avoidance brain that they have almost never experienced before. And that something is what makes them obsess. When an avoidant person meets someone new, their nervous system is running a constant background program. That program is scanning for signs of threat. And the biggest threat to an avoidant is emotional dependency, their own and yours. The moment they sense that you need them to feel okay, the alarm goes off, the walls go up, the distance grows. But when they meet someone who is warm, who is genuine, who clearly has feelings, and yet does not seem to need the avoidant in order to be okay, something completely different happens in their brain. The alarm doesn't go off, the walls don't go up, and for the first time they feel something rare. They feel safe to get close. This is the psychology behind why this habit works. It is not manipulation. It is alignment with how their nervous system actually functions. You are not tricking them. You are removing the trigger that has always made them run. Think about every other person the avoidant has been with, every person who fell for them hard, every person who texted twice when they didn't respond, every person who said, "You never open up to me," with pain written all over their face. Every person who adjusted their plans, canceled their own needs, became smaller or louder or more desperate in an attempt to keep the avoidant close. Each of those people, no matter how good their intentions, sent the same signal to the avoidant's nervous system. The signal that said, "I need you to regulate me," and the avoidant, who is already terrified of their own emotions, cannot handle being responsible for someone else's too, so they disappear. But when you practice radical emotional self-sufficiency, you send a completely different signal. Your signal says, "I enjoy you, I appreciate you, and I also have a whole, full, rich life that does not depend on your response time." That signal does something extraordinary to the avoidant. It confuses them in the best possible way. Because here's the thing about avoidance that most people don't realize. They are deeply attracted to people who don't seem to need them. But they are also deeply curious about people who seem to genuinely care. Most people they meet are either too needy or too cold. Finding someone who's warm but self-sufficient is like finding a combination they didn't think existed. And because their brain is a pattern-matching machine, it doesn't know what to do with you. It keeps returning to you, turning you over, trying to figure you out. That is obsession. And it happens almost involuntarily. Now, let me walk you through exactly how this plays out in real behavior, because understanding the concept is one thing, living it is another. The first layer of radical emotional self-sufficiency is how you respond to silence. When an avoidant goes quiet, which they will, what happens inside you for most people, the silence is unbearable. It activates something primal, or a fear of abandonment, a fear of being unloved, and that fear shows up in behavior. The double text, the "did I do something wrong" message, the slightly passive-aggressive comment when they finally resurface. Every one of these behaviors, however understandable, confirms the avoidant's fear. It says, "Your silence has power over my emotional state." When you practice radical self-sufficiency, the silence still happens. But your internal response changes. You feel the discomfort. You don't suppress it. You don't perform indifference. But you also don't let it run your behavior. You breathe through it. You redirect your energy towards your own life, your own goals, your own friendships, your own creative work, whatever fills you up. And when the avoidant resurfaces, because they almost always do, you are genuinely glad to hear from them. You're not relieved in a desperate way, genuinely glad, like a person who has been living fully and is happy to welcome someone back in. That response, that specific quality of response, does something to the avoidant that no amount of pursuing ever could. It shows them that you are safe, that you are not going to collapse without them, that getting close to you does not mean becoming responsible for your entire emotional world. And for a person who has spent their whole life terrified of that responsibility, this is the most attractive thing you could possibly offer them. The second layer is how you communicate your feelings, because self-sufficiency does not mean emotional suppression. It does not mean pretending you feel nothing. Avoidance can spot performed detachment from a mile away, and it does not attract them. It just matches their own walls. What you are doing is something fundamentally different. You are expressing your feelings cleanly, without agenda, without an implicit demand attached. There's a massive difference between saying, I really enjoyed spending time with you yesterday, and saying, I really enjoyed spending time with you yesterday. Why haven't you texted me today? The first one is clean. It shares a true feeling. It invites connection without demanding it. The second one, however valid the frustration, attaches a need to the feeling, and that need activates the avoidance alarm system. When you share your feelings cleanly, without expectation hanging off the end of every sentence, the avoidant can actually receive them. They can sit with them. They can even feel something in response to them because the feeling is a gift, not a pressure. This requires a level of emotional maturity that is genuinely hard because you do have needs. Those needs are real and valid. And somewhere down the line, they will need to be met, or this relationship is not sustainable. But in the early stages of connecting with an avoidant, the habit of expressing feeling without attached demand is what keeps their system calm enough to actually be present with you. The third layer is maintaining your own world. This is where I see so many people make the same painful mistake. The moment they start falling for someone avoidant, they slowly start canceling their plans, staying home in case the avoidant reaches out, putting their hobbies on hold, or seeing their friends less, making themselves available in a way that starts to feel like waiting. And the tragedy is that this happens out of love. It happens because they want to be there. But the effect on the avoidant is the opposite of what they intended. When you shrink your world for someone avoidant, two things happen. First, you become less interesting to them. Avoidants are deeply attracted to people who have their own full life. A person who is passionate about things, going places, growing, building, laughing with friends, pursuing something that aliveness is magnetic to them because it is safe. It signals independence. It signals that you do not need to consume them. Second, and this is the painful irony, when you make yourself constantly available, the avoidant no longer has to work to reach you. And the psychology of desire for avoidance especially is deeply tied to a sense of motion. When they have to think about you because you are not always there, that thinking becomes feeling. And that feeling becomes what they start calling attachment. So keep your world full, keep your friendships close, keep pursuing the things that light you up, not as a strategy to make them chase you, though that will happen, but because a full life is the soil in which self-sufficiency grows. You cannot perform this, you have to live it. The fourth layer is the warmth that wraps everything else. This is what makes this habit so different from simple emotional unavailability. Because you are not ice, you are not pulling away to punish them. You are not performing cool indifference and internally dying. You are genuinely warm. When you are with them, you are present. When something funny happens, you laugh freely. When they share something with you, you listen with your whole attention. When the moment feels close, you allow it to be close. You do not put your own walls up to match theirs. This warmth is what confuses the avoidance so completely, because they expect one of two things: either someone who overwhelms them with emotional need, which triggers retreat, or someone who matches their coolness, which gives them no reason to pursue. You offer something outside of those two categories. You are warm and you are free, close and independent, caring and not desperate. This combination literally does not compute in their experience. And the mind returns again and again to what it cannot categorize. Now, let's go deeper into the psychology, because understanding why this works at a neurological level is what will help you actually commit to it when things get hard. And things will get hard. The avoidance attachment style was formed in childhood, almost always through one of two experiences. Either they had caregivers who were emotionally unavailable, who didn't respond warmly to their needs, who perhaps communicated that needing things was a weakness or a burden. Or they had caregivers who were inconsistent, sometimes warm and sometimes dismissive, which taught them that love is unpredictable and therefore preparing for its absence is safer than trusting its presence. Either way, the child learned to suppress their attachment needs. They learned to self-soothe by disconnecting. They became, in a sense, hyper-independent, not because independence is their natural state, but because depending on others felt too dangerous. Now here is the crucial piece. That child grew up. And somewhere inside this adult who seems so self-contained, so unwilling to need anyone, there is still the part of them that wants what every human being wants, to be known or to be loved, to belong somewhere safe. When you practice radical emotional self-sufficiency combined with genuine warmth, you are speaking directly to that buried part of them, not with words, with a lived experience of being around you. You are proving through consistent behavior over time that closeness with you does not mean losing themselves, that being loved by you does not mean being consumed, that they can let you in without giving up the independence that has always felt like their only protection. And as that proof builds, something extraordinary happens. The avoidant starts to lower their guard, not dramatically, not all at once. Avoidants move in millimeters, not miles, but the direction changes. Instead of retreating, they start testing small steps toward you. A deeper conversation than they usually allow, a vulnerability they let slip, a plan they actually follow through on, and every time that move toward you is met not with need, but with warmth and freedom, the nervous system learns something new, or something it has never been allowed to learn before. It learns that this particular person is safe. Safety is the word. It all comes down to safety. Everything the avoidant does, every wall, every silence, every sudden retreat, is in service of emotional safety. When you become the person whose presence feels safe, you become the person they cannot stop thinking about. Because safe people are extraordinarily rare in the avoidance experience, and the mind clings to what is rare. Now let's talk about some specific situations because I want this to be as real and practical as possible for you. Situation 1, the avoidant goes cold after a moment of real closeness. This happens constantly, and it is one of the most disorienting things to experience. You had a real conversation, you felt the connection, something genuine passed between you, and then the next day they are distant, monosyllabic. Like it never happened. What is actually happening in their brain is fascinating. When an avoidant experiences a moment of genuine closeness, it triggers what psychologists call intimacy panic. They felt something real, and feeling something real means they are now vulnerable, and vulnerability means danger. So the system responds by creating distance to restore the feeling of safety. Most people respond to this by pursuing harder, by trying to recreate the closeness or demanding to know what went wrong. And this confirms the avoidance fear. It says, see, closeness leads to pressure. But when you practice radical self-sufficiency, your response is completely different. You notice the distance. You feel the disappointment. You don't pretend it's fine if it isn't. But you also don't chase. You go back to your own life. You give them room. You don't fill the silence with anxious energy. And when they reemerge, because after the panic settles, they almost always do, you meet them with warmth. Not coldness designed to punish them, not exaggerated enthusiasm designed to drag them back in, just genuine warmth. Like the closeness is still there, like you never made it weird because you didn't. This is enormously powerful for the avoidant because it teaches them something they deeply need to learn. That intimacy does not have to cost them everything. That they can get close, feel scared, take space, and the person they care about will still be there, warm, whole, and not destroyed by their need for distance. Over time, this teaches them that closeness is survivable. And as that lesson lands deeper and deeper, the desire to be close to you grows. Situation 2, the avoidant compares you to other people or mentions their ex. This is a test. Sometimes conscious, usually unconscious. They are checking to see how you handle the feeling of insecurity it creates, whether you will become anxious and compete, whether you will become jealous and cling, whether you will interrogate them about their past. When you are radically self-sufficient, you don't take that bait. Not because you are suppressing feelings, but because your sense of worth is not conditioned on winning a competition. You can acknowledge what they said with genuine ease. You can even express interest in what they're sharing. Because you are not threatened by their past. You know who you are. You know the quality of what you bring. And that groundedness is, again, something the avoidant has rarely, if ever, encountered. It registers as confidence. And confidence is extraordinarily attractive to someone who has spent so long managing everyone else's insecurity on top of their own. Situation 3. The avoidant suddenly becomes more available and more interested than usual. This actually panics a lot of people who are used to the chase dynamic. It feels unfamiliar. Sometimes people unconsciously start pulling back when the avoidant gets closer, which re-triggers the whole pursuit cycle. When you are living in genuine self-sufficiency, this doesn't happen. You don't need to pull back to feel powerful. You don't need the chase to feel interested. You can simply receive their closeness with the same warmth you've always had. No exaggerated response, no sudden pulling away, no, oh, now you want to talk to me. Just open, easy welcome. That consistency is what builds the trust that allows the avoidant to keep moving closer. Situation 4, the avoidant explicitly says they don't want a relationship or can't give you what you need. This is where self-sufficiency becomes not just a habit, but a form of genuine self-respect, because you have to be honest about your own needs here. Radical emotional self-sufficiency does not mean you have no needs. It means your emotional state is not dependent on the avoidant's moment-to-moment behavior, but your needs are still real. And if this person genuinely cannot or will not meet them, staying in hope of changing them is not self-sufficiency. It is another form of emotional dependency. The self-sufficient response in this situation is the hardest one of all. It is to believe them, to take what they said seriously, to make a decision that honors your own worth, because the paradox here is extraordinary. When you actually respect your own needs enough to step back from someone who has told you they cannot meet them, the avoidant often experiences the most intense pull toward you they have ever felt, not because you played a game, but because you showed them unmistakably that your self-worth is real and non-negotiable. And that is the most irresistible thing a human being can demonstrate. Let's talk about what this habit does to you internally, because this is not just about the avoidant. This is about you becoming someone different, someone more whole. And that wholeness is the actual secret. When you practice radical emotional self-sufficiency, something starts to happen in your own nervous system. You stop giving away your power in increments. You stop measuring your worth by the other person's response time. You stop living in the gap between their texts. You stop shrinking yourself to be more manageable. You stop abandoning your own life in the hope that they'll show up for it. And as you stop all of those things, you start to feel something unfamiliar. You start to feel like yourself, a self with edges and desires and preferences and non-negotiables, a self that has weight and warmth and direction. And here's the quiet miracle of that. When you become more fully yourself, you become more magnetically attractive, not just to avoidance, to everyone, but to avoidance especially, because the avoidance attraction system is, at its core, drawn to people who seem psychologically whole, people who don't need the avoidant to complete them, or people who bring something full to the table rather than arriving empty and hoping to be filled. There is a kind of irony here that I want to name directly. The more genuinely you fill your own life, the more the avoidant wants to be part of it. The more you release the need for their validation, the more they seem compelled to offer it. The more you live without waiting for them, the more they find themselves thinking about you reaching out, showing up. This is not magic. This is deep, precise psychology. The less you need them, the safer they feel to need you back. Now, I want to be honest about something. This habit is not easy to develop. It sounds clean and simple when I describe it. The reality of practicing it, especially when you have real feelings for someone and they are going cold, is genuinely difficult. There will be moments when your anxiety spikes and everything in you wants to reach out, to check in, to make sure they're okay, to make sure you haven't lost them. And in those moments, the habit feels impossible. This is where your inner work becomes the most important thing, because you cannot sustainably perform self-sufficiency. You can try it for a day, maybe a week. But if underneath the performance, you are still fundamentally dependent on their response to feel okay, the cracks will show. Avoidants are extraordinarily perceptive at detecting inauthenticity. Their survival is dependent on it. They will sense the performance behind the cool, and it will not attract them. It will just confuse them. Real self-sufficiency comes from doing the internal work that most people skip it, comes from understanding your own attachment patterns. Where did you learn that love requires pursuit? Where did you learn that silence means rejection? Where did you learn to conflate being loved with being needed? These are not rhetorical questions. They are real questions worth sitting with, because your anxious pursuit of the avoidant is not random. It is the result of your own early programming meeting theirs. And your patterns and their patterns have found each other in a kind of elegant, painful dance. When you start to understand your own patterns, you get a choice. You can keep dancing, or you can change your steps. Changing your steps does not mean suppressing your feelings or pretending you are something you are not. It means going to therapy, if that is available to you. It means journaling about what triggers your anxious attachment responses. It means building friendships and a personal life so rich that your entire emotional world is not sitting in one person's hands. It means learning to self-soothe in healthy ways. It means developing a relationship with yourself that is so genuinely warm and supportive that you become your own first source of comfort. And when you do all of that, the self-sufficiency is not a habit you are performing. It is who you actually are. And that person, that whole, warm, complete, fully alive person, is someone the avoidant simply cannot stop thinking about. Let's also talk about time. Because one of the biggest mistakes people make with avoidance is expecting change on an anxious attachment timeline. Anxious attachers move fast. They feel fast, they commit fast, they want resolution fast. Avoidance moves slowly. Their trust is built in increments so small that sometimes you wonder if anything is moving at all, but it is. When you are consistently warm and self-sufficient, change is happening in the avoidant. It is just happening underground in the nervous system, in the slow renegotiation of what safety means, in the gradual expansion of what they allow themselves to feel. Patience is not passive in this context. Patience is active. It is the daily practice of choosing your own life while remaining genuinely open. It is showing up for yourself so consistently that your self-respect becomes undeniable. It is trusting that the seeds you are planting in this dynamic are growing even when you cannot see them. And sometimes, despite everything, the avoidant does not move toward you. Sometimes their fear is so deeply embedded that no amount of safety you offer is enough to shift it. And that is one of the hardest truths in all of this. Not every avoidant will break through their walls. Not every connection will become the relationship you hoped for. And your self-sufficiency has to extend to that reality too. The ability to look at a situation that is not giving you what you need and choose yourself anyway. That is the fullest expression of this habit. And paradoxically, it is also the moment the avoidant is most likely to wake up, or when they realize they might actually lose you, not because you threatened it, not because you performed indifference, but because you genuinely decided your own wholeness matters more than the possibility of them. That decision, made from a real and rooted place, is the most powerful signal you can ever send to an avoidant. It says, you are not afraid of losing me more than I am afraid of losing myself. And in the avoidance world, where they have spent their whole life trying to protect themselves from the pain of loss, meeting someone who has integrated that same protection in a healthy way is genuinely groundbreaking. It rewires something in them. It makes them reconsider. It makes them ask questions they have never let themselves ask before. Questions like, why can't I stop thinking about this person? Why does their absence feel like something I actually care about? Why do I suddenly want to open up? Those questions are the beginning of something real, not the performance of closeness, or not the avoidant running their usual cycles, but genuine movement, the kind that might actually lead somewhere. So here is what I want you to take away from everything we've talked about. The one secret habit is not a technique you apply to someone else. It is a transformation you undergo yourself. It is the decision to become so genuinely full, so warmly alive, so rooted in your own worth that you no longer bend yourself into shapes trying to fit into someone else's fear. When you do that, when you truly live it and not just think it, something changes in every room you walk into. Something changes in how people experience you. Something changes in how the avoidant in your life begins to see you. Or not as someone who needs them, but as someone they might need. not as someone they can keep at arm's length without consequence, but as someone they are genuinely afraid of losing. And that is the obsession, not the desperate, anxious obsession of someone running toward you, but the deep, quiet, relentless pull of someone realizing that what they have been running from might actually be the thing they have always been looking for. You don't have to be less. You don't have to chase. You don't have to shrink. You don't have to perform anything. You just have to be so undeniably, warmly, completely yourself that even the person who is most afraid of closeness cannot help but want to get close to you. That is the habit. That is the psychology. And if you are willing to do the real work of building it, not just reading about it, but actually living it, it will change not just how the avoidant sees you, it will change how you see yourself. And that change, that quiet revolution in your own sense of worth and aliveness is worth so much more than any relationship outcome. It is the foundation from which every good relationship in your life, including the one with yourself, becomes possible. Now take a breath, because everything you just heard, it's not about them. It never was. It's about who you become when you stop making anyone else's comfort more important than your own truth. That is where the real power lives. And that power has been inside you this whole time.